Alrighty then, onto the lighting. Before we start setting up our lights, let's just move the camera a little bit, as I wasn't too fond of it. I'm just going to rotate this camera down ever so slightly. I'm going to try and get equal space between the edge of the frame and the bottom of the bottle here, and the same up there. I think something around that is fine. Cool. Let's open up the render view, and before we do that, I'll change the resolution to 500 by 1000. Left click on the resolution, that shows the new resolution there. So open the render view. I can just keep that sort of in here, I think. Just like that. So first off, our sky dome is way too bright. Let's turn the exposure down to 0 and the intensity multiplier down to 0.2. So now it's really dark and we're getting really subtle reflections, which will help add realism to our bottle. We'll drop down an RS light. This light we'll name to backlight. On the light tab, we'll normalize the intensity of the light, which just means no matter how large we scale this light in terms of area size, it won't scale the intensity of the light. Let's move out of the camera. See that the light is pretty damn huge right now, so we'll change that to something like 20 centimeters by 40 centimeters. So 0.2 by 0.4. When I'm in the viewport, I'll hit enter. That will bring up the handles, and then you can hit T for move. Lift it up so it's above the floor, so it's not intersecting. R for rotate. Just rotate that right around like that. And we're just going to shift this light all the way back until it disappears behind the bottle. Like so. Shift it to the right a little bit so it's centered. Let's turn down the intensity of the light. We'll turn that to something like 0.2. So that's looking nice and subtle. We've got some really nice backlighting there, picking out some color and detail. Let's copy and paste that light. And let's rename this to rim_L. So we're going to add a rim to the left hand side of this bottle. So enter when you're in this viewport, T for move. I think I'll turn the backlight off just so we can work on this rim light. I'm just going to move this over sort of at a 45-degree angle. Move that in. Keep moving it outwards. And what I'm trying to do is just pick out some detail along the edges and just bring out the overall shape of the bottle. I think right now the light is too strong, so we'll drop that down to 0.1, just so it's a little bit more subtle. We want to avoid blowout because it's really difficult to recover in comp and it looks pretty amateur, so stay away from that. We'll copy and paste this light once again. We'll rename this to rim_R. Enter in the viewport again. T to move. I think we'll just rotate this round so we get sort of like a rim on the right hand side as well. Just like that. I think that's not looking too bad. I think that looks quite nice. We're getting some nice detail either side. That looks okay. Let's create a key light sort of in front at a 45-degree angle. And this key light is just acting as just a bit of a detail light to pick out some detail just in the front here. Entering the viewport, let's move it. I think we'll lift this light upwards like that. And we'll just move it to the side. So it looks something kind of like this. Just so we're getting this front face just picked out a little bit more. I think I'd like to sharpen the reflection here. So the way we do that is by decreasing the size of the area light, which will tighten up the specular reflection. So we got something that looks like this. So if I just view from the top, I think that's not looking too bad. Next, I think we'll add sort of like a softer fill light just at a 45-degree angle from the camera here, just to bring out a little bit more detail and just sort of fill in the darkness a little bit. So I'll copy and paste the key light. Copy, paste the key light. We'll rename this to fill. Enter, T to move. I think we'll just rotate this back down. We'll move it down like so. We'll position this at a 45-degree angle like that. And we'll increase the area size to 0.3 by 0.3 just to diffuse that light a little bit more. Looks like it's slightly off balance there. Let's rotate it back, move it up like that. Let's move it up a little bit more, rotate it. There you go. That's looking pretty good. So we've got some decent shape going on. We've got some nice highlights picking out the sort of outline of the bottle. We don't want to make that too strong. We're picking out this solar sign at the front. We're getting some fairly nice detail there. Let's turn back on the backlight and see how we're looking. Yeah, so I think in total that's working. I think you could further refine this, just moving the lights around and seeing what works. And just the main objective, as we've just been talking about, is just trying to bring out as much shape as possible. Don't let things sort of fall into darkness, because we don't like the black levels going too black. Yeah, I think overall that's looking okay. That looks nice. I'll save the scene at this point. V13. Let's add, I think, an overhead light just to pick out a little bit of detail on the top of the cap. We'll copy this fill light here. I think this time I'll view within the light, so I'll drag this into the viewport. Let's rename this light to overhead. Lock the lights. I'm just going to move around. If I need to, if I need to pivot around this bottle, I can click S on the keyboard to go into selection mode, click on the bottle, and then click space G. And from this point, let's just zoom out. I'll place this light somewhere by there, I think. I think we'll increase this light to something like 0.5. Let's see what that looks like. Push that a little bit too far. I think we'll move it more this way. I think that's looking pretty cool, so I'm just going to toggle that on and off just to see what we're getting there. I'm going to come out of the light, see where the position of that light is. I think maybe we can bring this around just a touch more around there. Trying to get a little bit of detail just in these areas as well as the top. I think we'll turn the intensity back down to 1. We can always increase this in comp later on, so let's just toggle off one more time. There you go, we're getting a little bit more detail there. Looks cool. Let's light up the backdrop a little bit. I'll copy the overhead light, I think. Paste it. Copy the overhead light, paste it. We'll rename this to backdrop underscore overhead. Click enter in this viewport, click T. We'll move this back and we'll put it somewhere sort of around here, I think. So it's in the center, just so we got a bit of a sort of a godly type effect going on at the top. Move that right in there, just like that. We don't want the light to be visible here, so we can just turn off visible. I'm just going to shift that light upwards until it sort of disappears out of frame. I'll increase the size to 0.5 by 0.5, and I'll drop down the intensity is something like 0.5. I think works quite well. Yeah, that's working well for me. I'll copy and paste this light one more time. I'll call this backdrop fill. Enter in the keyboard to bring up the handle. Let's rotate this light around a little bit more and put the light sort of, I think, back here. Just so we're filling in the area behind, but we don't want this harsh line where the area light is there. I'm not liking that so much. I'm just going to increase the intensity of this up just a little bit. Let's try 2. Maybe push that a little bit too much, maybe 1.25. Let's get rid of this light here that's causing this, or at least turn it off for the floor. And I think that's the backlight. So what we're seeing is the contact of this area light hitting the floor and the light spreading outwards like that, which is causing that harsh line. So if we take, I think, all of these lights, and we'll go to the Objects tab on those lights, we'll enable light mesh associations. Right now the light is enabled for star, which just means everything. So that's a wildcard. And these can come in very, very useful. And what I'll do is I'll add a hi-hat, which just means except. So this is saying everything except floor. I think for the key light, I want a little bit of shadowing here. So I'll turn this to star for this object, and maybe even the overhead light as well. See what that looks like. Yeah, just like that, I think. So currently the lights that are lighting the floor are the key light and the overhead light. All the other ones are just lighting the bottle or everything except the floor. Just going to zoom in so we can see what's happening. I think that's looking pretty cool. I think we need to turn down this backdrop fill. I think it's a little bit too strong. Something like 0.5 is fine. Let's decrease this backdrop overhead to 0.2. Maybe even a touch more, 0.35. Just so it's a little bit more subtle. That's really starting to take some shape now. I think that's looking quite nice. Let's pause the render. We'll come back over to the camera. We'll remove the divided by 2. So we're rendering at a resolution of 1000 by 2000. We'll jump into the ROPNet and I'll change the minimum samples to something like 32 and the max to 256. And this is going to take a little bit longer to render, but it'll be nice to see what this is looking like at a higher resolution. So we'll hit play. Let's turn on bucket rendering, which takes that out of the IPR mode. And we'll just wait for that to finish. There we are, we're in at 100% there. I think this is looking really cool. The image overall is looking sort of a little bit on the darker side. So the highlights could be boosted a little bit, but that's something we can handle in comp. Also, there's something else we can do in Redshift, and it's called post effects. So we can add some photographic exposure to this. So if we turn on photographic exposure here, we can see slightly different results. I'll turn the film speed, or the ISO, down to something like 40. I'll turn the shutter time down to 1/50th of a second, so just 50. Turn the f-stop down to 5.6, I think. We'll turn the vignetting off. We don't want that. We add vignetting in comp later on. The allowable overexposure I usually set to about 0.75 or something. I think we'll turn the ISO right down to something like 30, maybe even 20. And I think that's looking a lot better now. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I'll go back. I think I'll turn down this overhead light just a touch. It's kind of bothering me that it's that bright. So we'll save a snapshot for this. I think we'll turn this down to maybe something like 0.6. I can shift, left click and drag there. And that will do a region render. And we can compare the difference. There you go. So it's just taken that little bit of heat off. So we're avoiding blowout. Stop the render. I'll click R to remove the region render so we can see it. Cool. I think overall that's a quite a nice looking image. And the rest can be pushed in comp later.